Yes. So here we are yet again with the members of Parliament once again angering Kenyans and being on the opposite side of what some would say is history. So members of Parliament now earning 250,000 shillings in house allowance. There is uproar in the country. So let's, I suppose, start with this. A history of this, Gashuri. You know, how did we get to at least this point?
Before you even get there, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, who is also the chairman of the Parliamentary Service Commission, spoke to Steve Leto yesterday, and he defended the house allowance. And this is what he had to say.
Other people in those other arms of government are paid house allowances. Our own staff here, who are close to 1,000 or more than 1,000, are paid house allowances. The members of Parliament are the only category of state officers that SRC has discriminated against. We would want to know why. Unless SRC does not think that members of Parliament have any use, in which case then Kenyans should be asked to do away with Parliament.
Yeah. This is how we got where we are.
Yes.
Last year in October, Justice Chacha Mwita made a ruling. Because you remember the tiff between SRC and the Parliamentary Service Commission. They went to court. And the Parliamentary Service Commission was citing the Employment Act, that as an employer, you have an obligation to provide your employees with a house allowance or a house or some housing benefit. And at the same time, the Parliamentary Service Commission was citing Article 260 of the Constitution that lists all the state officers. And they were arguing that if the president is receiving a house allowance or a house, in this case State House, the Deputy President receiving a house allowance or a house, he has one in Karen, the official residence, the Chief Justice too, the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Speaker of the Senate, as well as judges and other state officers listed there, why MPs should not receive house allowances. So this issue is here with us, and they took advantage of that ruling, which the SRC did not appeal, and that's why they backdated the allowance to October last year. So you can imagine all the MPs have pocketed a cool 250,000 shillings times 7 minus 30% tax.
Yes, right.
So a cool 1 million plus, and they're going to receive that allowance continuously unless the court, the higher court orders otherwise. So it's a burden we have to bear, but at the same time, we have to question how SRC is operating. Our CAS, for example, Chief Administrative Secretaries receiving house allowances and using which gazette notice. Yeah? So maybe SRC now needs to deal with this situation and give us a clear understanding of who is receiving who is, for example, eligible to get a car grant or mileage allowances and so on and so forth. Mortgages. Members of Parliament are receiving mortgages of 35 million shillings. Of course, this is optional. Some not opting to take it because it is going to eat
because they have to pay it in the 5 years.
Within 4.5 years.
In the 4.5
yeah. Okay. So, I mean, SRC needs to be clear with us. Are cabinet secretaries receiving house allowances? And if they are, how much?
But I think also the other thing is that the Parliament has never subjected itself to the authority of the SRC. They've always been arguing. Remember, Sarah Serem was a marked woman, so much so that even when she was being vetted
for the China job,
when she was nominated for that post of ambassador in China, I mean, they clearly told her they had an issue, they had an axe to grind with her. So there's a sense in which the SRC might be saying all these things. I mean, even right now, the SRC said, well, we know what MPs are talking about is unconstitutional, illegal and all those things. But I think Parliament, and this is a major grouse that I think a lot of people have with Parliament, the fact that they have tried all the time to operate outside of the remit of the SRC, in a sense saying that, fine, we need this house allowance, and if you won't give it to us, we'll just take it. I mean, if all employees were to act like that,
to be able to do that,
where you can just ask your employer to give you something if they don't.
And you take it. But isn't that exactly what the problem is? Because Parliament has financial and operational oversight over SRC.
I think the greater problem that Parliament has is reputational. It has this reputation of a greedy house that is always asking for more. You remember the story of Oliver Twist. Give him more, more porridge, more porridge. It's always demanding. I don't know whether there is a year that has passed without this particular house asking for a pack or two. So even when they are making what would actually be a logical question on the issue of house allowances, there is still that perception among the public. And you watched earlier in the day, Semana Citizen, we were talking to Wananchi, what they actually feel. They think these are gluttons. These are people who are out to just eat. They are only interested in their own welfare. It's something that Parliament needed to manage, especially in how they do it. Argue and make your case in a less arrogant way. If we actually go to the whole history of this parliamentary service bill that came to discussion last year, you'll find that the Parliament, especially the Speaker, Justin Muturi, has had to take different positions. The position he's taking today is not the position he took in December last year. The position he took last year was, hey, gentlemen and ladies of the August House, refer to Article 116 of the Constitution, that an act of Parliament that confers direct interest to the MPs can only come to effect in the next election.
Yes,
after the next one. Yes. That was the argument he was making last year, in December last year. Here he is today saying, no. Did you hear what Justice Muta said? We are entitled to this, and it's not about the SRC.
Yeah, but can I ask, because every time this happens with the members of Parliament, they say, but why us? Why is it that when, this happens with MPs, you say it's a reputational issue, possibly, and they're saying, I mean, the list of state officers, according to Article 260, is long. The President, the DP, the CSs, MPs, judges, magistrates, commissioners, MCAs, governors, CECs, the Attorney General. I mean, the list is long. Yeah.
In all fairness, they make a very fair point. The fact is, members of Parliament have access to a lot of information. They know how members of the executive are behaving. We have inserted an entire role there called CAS. What do CASs do? What is their daily, day-to-day functions? What are their benefits? So members of Parliament are watching this and saying, hey, how about us? And they're using they are a law-making body. So they would tell you that, look, at least we are legal. Check what are the CSs and the CS and PSs are doing. Where is the house allowance? It's in which Gazette notice? Do we have any?
It's an opportunity for SRC now to reclaim its position, because
can it?
It should, because the Constitution gives it the mandate to deal in terms of reviewing the remuneration of all state officers and public officers.
Yes.
This is an opportunity for SRC now to tell us openly, come clean and tell us, this is what CAS are earning, these are the benefits they are getting, this is what the CSs are earning, these are their benefits, so that it's now clear for everybody to know.
Okay, because, for example, how do they gain independence when it is the same Parliament that they answer to, because they're one of those Chapter 15 constitutional commissions? So how do we get SRC to the point that they're able to actually state and direct parliamentarians on how they're able to do that? Because it's the same Parliament that makes laws, it's the same Parliament that vets SRC.
You see, the same argument can be made of the Judicial Service Commission. I mean, judges and the entire leadership of the Judicial Service Commission, their reports are audited by Parliament. When nominations are made for such commissions, they are vetted by Parliament. So the same argument applies, that Parliament has its role, the judiciary has its role, each of these commissions has their role. So this is an opportunity, even by way of gazettement, for SRC to tell us who earns what, so that it is now clear. When members of Parliament tell us other state officers are getting this, why are we not? So SRC tells us, are they getting or are they not?
Let me make this point just related to what Francis is saying. On roles don't self-implement. It's about the leadership of that team. Sarah Serem was a very assertive person. and just using the law, using the regulations of the SRC, and she managed to achieve quite a lot. She's been replaced by Lynn Mengich, and I think this is a test for her.
This is it.
This is the test for her. Parliament has thrown in a challenge that they can write in their own allowances without reference to SRC. What do you say as Lynn Mengich, as the leader of SRC? And they're saying they're going to court. They haven't gone to court yet.
Yes, and I was going to say this. I think that, and Dina's alluded to this a little bit earlier, the fact that MPs, one, have the opportunity to decide what they are paid, one, what allowances, what basic pay is going to be, and all of those things. And yet, if you think about it in fairness, I mean, we could address all the other people, but we're thinking about politicians that a lot of people actually say, well, you know, this is something you go into voluntarily, and they usually go there and they say, we are going there to serve, and that sort of thing. And if you look at how it compares, what we pay our MPs here compares with other people around the world. I mean, it's something that's been said many times, but it is actually true that if you think about it, our MPs earn 6 times more than those in India. They earn 3 times more than those in China, 3 times more than those in Hungary, and they actually earn almost 1.5 times the MPs in Switzerland. And remember,
all of these countries,
Switzerland has a GDP per capita of $80,000 a year. That is 80 times more than what we have here in Kenya. So it's a situation where our MPs are being paid more than the MPs in Switzerland. But if you look at how we live here, our standard of living and everything, it is actually 80 times worse than that of Switzerland. The context, therefore, here is that people are saying, hey, is this really how much MPs who serve in a country like this country should be earning? Because why is that important? These are the same people who can decide everything about what everyone else is paid. So if theirs is going like this in leaps and bounds every other time, how on earth are they ever going to say, well, you know what, cabinet secretaries in this country earn too much, maybe we should have a way of you know, pushing SRC or whoever, or coming up with a certain law that then begins to determine how
and also you take a look at the value for money, you know, in terms of the quality and the quantity of legislation that comes out of it, that one would then say this justifies, because every time we talk about pay, sometimes beyond just looking at the amount of money that you're being paid, but it's also the output and whether, you know, that matches. And you know, there's lots of questions about whether MPs, you know, pass quality legislation, pass it in time, pass the number of legislations that would be required to change Kenyans' lives, that would then have Kenyans say, you know.
Very valid argument. Some of the MPs, I hear them argue that it is not about us. It's about the people who elected us. Because every so often, when there's a harambe, when there's a matana somewhere,
and that's what. Just hold on a little bit, because let's listen to Atwoli himself, who said that and also called for the dismissal of the SRC.
Kitu iko hapa inaitwa SRC, waziri wajumbe SRC, muungane na sisi mtoe. SRC inapiga nyinyi, inapiga wafanyikazi, inapiga state officers, inapiga everybody. SRC was meant to advise, not to regulate.
And also earlier in the week, he had blamed the voters, as you were starting to point out. He said, I mean, we wanted to give the
supported them, isn't it? He said that Kenyans should never complain about MPs adding this or that thing to their pay, because they're the people who have made MPs their ATMs.
I think we have the clip. Can we have a look at that?
As we look for it.
Yes. Yes, let's see if we have it. But in the meantime.
And even as we look for it, there are also some truths about this statement. I mean, every so often when people are arranging a harambe in the constituencies, in the villages, the first person that comes to mind as the guest of honor is ni mubunge wetu, sindio? So members of parliament, members of parliament will probably say, we need money so that we give you money. But the counter argument to it is, what are these fundraisers for? Yeah, they're about medical bills, they're about education, they're about hospital bills, so on and so forth. So if the services were provided for. If people had an opportunity to make a decent living and be able to foot their bills in terms of medical care, taking their children to school, I mean, all these things, you will not need harambes. And then you can also make a counter argument. I mean, how many harambes are you invited to every so often? And I don't hear ourselves.
The MPs will tell you every time somebody dies.
Asking Joe and Linas to give us a salary hike. So probably we should take you from
that's probably not a problem
exactly,
for
and it's
you.
A good it's a very basic rule of employment. None of us goes to our employer and list the number of dependents, so that we peg that
on our salary scale.
On that. If that is how it works.
I have 5 wives. Just can imagine telling you.
Are you the Buddha guy from Kirinyaga?
It's a very flawed logic from the part of members of parliament. Even people are told to support that. But as a fact, the culture needs to be addressed. MPs, elected leaders, and even permanent secretaries, watch them in the villages and you can tell they are under immense pressure from people who say, oh, I don't have school fees, I have a child that is in hospital, my wife has given birth. Every little problem is brought to the elected member. So that's a valid point, but it cannot be the excuse and reason to raise your tax.
All right, fair enough. And I suppose we also on this table receive the same sort of requests.
Absolutely.
So perhaps we should be going to the boss and saying, unajua nikienda banana.
Mbaya.
Let's take a break here on News Gang. We'll be coming back with more of your feedback. Plus, when we come back, the confusion with the county budgets, we'll be speaking about that, and the auditor's reports, just what is going on with these monies. Where are they? Have they been misappropriated? We'll be back with that and more. The hashtag is NewsGang on Twitter. We'll see you in a short break.